Clean the house now. No rest for the help. That's what Jack shouted, throwing beer on me. Caught off guard by the sudden action, I froze. I was drenched and the strong scent of beer filled my nostrils. Jack continued to hurl abusive words at me. What should I do? What does Jack want from me? Overwhelmed, I was at a loss for words when suddenly, from the computer, I heard a familiar voice. Upon hearing it, Jack, who was red with anger just moments ago, stiffened and collapsed on the spot. My name is Susan Miller. I'm 33 years old. I worked as a secretary in a company in Kansas, putting in my best every day. Every day was filled with crunching numbers and going through heaps of documents. I often thought I should be using the computer more, but being among the younger employees, I didn't have much say. Always trying to please my superiors and being forced into after-work drinks I had no interest in attending. My spirit was utterly worn out. This number here is wrong again. I'm sorry. Please be careful. You've been making a lot of mistakes lately. Yes. Perhaps due to the exhaustion, my mistakes became more frequent, and my already dwindling confidence in my work diminished further. Maybe I'd be better off quitting. That's what I was thinking, when a man started coming to our company for sales. This man, who later became my husband, was named Jack Miller. Just at a glance, it was clear that Jack was a kind man. Even to someone like me, who just served tea, Jack was always kind. I found myself gradually drawn to him. However, I couldn't express my feelings to Jack. After all, I was the one who had feelings for him, and I assumed he probably didn't feel the same way about me. That's what I believed. But a few months after Jack began visiting the company, he made a move. We started going out for drinks after work, and our relationship blossomed from there. After dating for 2 years, we tied the knot. I quit my job upon getting married, and Jack and I began our new life in a home we both loved. We had visited several real estate agents to find a home we both agreed upon. Having left my job, I thought I'd lead a happy life with Jack from now on. The mere thought of it filled my heart with joy. However, the life I imagined was not to be. About a month after our wedding, I noticed a change in Jack. Welcome home, Jack. You're home early today. Yeah, kinda. He didn't even look at me, and there was no usual greeting. Seeing Jack act so differently, I couldn't help but feel concerned. Jack continued to seem downcast. Are you okay? You seem tired. Huh? Oh, yeah. He seemed not just tired, but perhaps irritated. Something was definitely off about him. Maybe he's just had a long day, I thought, and tried not to dwell on it too much. However, the next day, and the day after that, Jack's demeanor remained unchanged. Gradually, it wasn't just his attitude or greetings. He stopped taking the lunch I prepared for him, and he stopped informing me when he would be coming home late. I could tell he was starting to treat me with indifference. Did I do something to upset Jack? Time flew by as these thoughts occupied my mind. I was consumed with insecurity about my actions and concern for Jack. The situation took a turn a few months after Jack's change in behavior began. Suddenly, he started lashing out at me with harsh words. One evening at dinner, Jack spoke up without touching his food. Hey, Susan. You realize it? Realize what? How could I know what he meant when he didn't specify? I urged Jack to explain further. Nonchalantly, he said, that your cooking sucks. What? It's bad? Yeah. You didn't even realize? Think about how I feel, having to eat this terrible food every day. I've cooked for him many times since we were dating, and he never once complained. He always ate with enthusiasm and often told me how delicious it was. Seeing him enjoy my cooking so much, it never crossed my mind that he would find it distasteful. But you always said it was good. Did I? Don't remember that. Seeing my worried expression, Jack burst out laughing. After a hearty laugh, he set down his utensils and retired to the bedroom. Looking at the untouched food, I felt indescribable emotions. I too put down my utensils, replaying Jack's words in my mind. Had he been pretending to like my cooking all along? Or had my cooking skills deteriorated? No matter how much I pondered, I couldn't find a satisfying answer. But one thing became clear to me. Considering his recent behavior and the words he just said, it seemed Jack had grown to dislike me. Initially, I thought he might just be tired, but his recent behavior was way over the top. The old Jack would have told me if he was feeling worn out. It must be true. But then, that would mean I did something to make Jack despise me. Yet, I couldn't think of anything. My doubts about Jack kept mounting. 2 more months passed. Jack's behavior deteriorated day by day, and the kind-hearted man I fell in love with was nowhere to be found. He hurled insults at me almost daily and made it very clear through his actions and noises that he was irritated. You know. Can't you even clean properly? What? Clean? Yeah. The bathroom, the toilet, none of them are clean. The living room is a mess too. I always want to keep the house clean, so I clean the bathroom and toilet almost every day. I even vacuum daily. What more does Jack want? I don't understand. Even as I was downtrodden, Jack continued to berate me. Of all the things he said, the one that hurt the most was, "Why did I even marry a woman like you?" Were all his previous expressions of love just lies? The moment that thought crossed my mind, I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. Ugh, why are you crying? Cut the fake tears. In the past, he would have comforted me, but now all he does is hurl insults. Laughing at me, Jack returned to our bedroom. Initially, we shared the bedroom. Now, I've been relegated to the couch. I had gotten used to sleeping in the living room. I was aware that Jack was taking me for granted and not valuing me. But I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce. I still believed in Jack. However, Jack's treatment of me continued to worsen daily. "Hey! Food!" he'd demand, only to complain. "I can't eat this crap." I'd suggested dining out occasionally, but for some reason, Jack vehemently opposed it. And he wouldn't tell me why. He'd return from work, complain about the house, and then demand dinner. Ever since his attitude started to change, I'd often found myself pondering what I did wrong. Observing Jack's recent behavior, I concluded he was simply venting his stress on me. The contradictions between his words and actions, and his consistent tendency to lash out and complain, made it all too clear. I get that Jack might be worn out from work. But hey, I'm human too. Endlessly being on the receiving end of criticism, I too am accumulating stress. I had once wished he'd switch places with me to understand, but I was already at my breaking point. "Hey, Jack. Can you stop already?" I mustered up the courage to talk to him. "I don't know if it's because you're tired from work, but can you stop taking it out on me? I mean, I deal with your complaints every day and it's stressing me out too." Jack looked at me, aghast. "What are you talking about?" "That's exactly what I mean. Right when you come home, you just start with the complaints. I'm trying my best, you know?" Jack half laughed at my words. But as soon as I finished talking, his face turned beet red with anger. "You know, listening to you, who do you think you are?" "What?" "Just a housewife, and you can't even clean properly or cook decent meals. Why shouldn't I complain? You live so carefreely. That's what ticks me off." "Well, why don't you tell me what's wrong? If you do, I'll try to fix it." "No, I won't. I can see that even if I tell you, you won't change. You figure out what's wrong." Even when I asked what I could improve on, Jack just avoided the question. From this conversation alone, it was evident that Jack viewed me as nothing more than a stress relief outlet. Expressing my feelings to Jack only made our relationship deteriorate further. His verbal abuses became more severe, and his attitude even colder. Remembering our happier days, I'd often sigh. In the midst of this life, one day, I received an unexpected call. It was from my mother-in-law. We had a good relationship, but rarely spoke on the phone, so I quickly picked up. "Hello?" "Oh, Susan. How have you been?" Her voice was cheerful over the phone. After some small talk, She got to the main point. Oh, handcrafting? Yes. I was thinking of picking up a new hobby and remembered you're into handcrafting. I was hoping you could teach me a few things. Actually, handcrafting was a hobby of mine. I'd buy materials and tools and spend my free time, especially when Jack wasn't around, crafting. I once mentioned it to my mother-in-law, but never thought she'd remember. Oh, of course. I'd be happy to help. From that call, I began to talk with her frequently. Not just regular calls, but video calls. Initially, we only had voice calls, but as we wanted to show each other our work and explain materials in detail, we switched to video. Her house wasn't too far, but constantly visiting would be a hassle. So, when it was our designated crafting time, I'd go into my crafting room and we'd craft together while on call. My heart, which had been tormented by Jack's actions, felt somewhat purified during these chats with her. By the way, how have things been with Jack recently? Everything okay? Yes. That's good to hear. I never spoke to her about the issues with Jack. I didn't want to worry her, and more than anything, I wanted to forget about him during our time together. Even after I began video calling with my mother-in-law, Jack's attitude remained as terrible as ever. I was desperately trying to keep my mother-in-law from realizing just how awful Jack was being. But then, one day, something happened. It was a Saturday, a few weeks after I'd started the video calls with my mother-in-law. I was in the middle of a call with her, having finished my housework as usual, when suddenly the door swung open. Jack. Turning around, there he stood near the door, holding something, seemingly oblivious to the ongoing video call. He sneered, approaching me. What are you doing, sneaking around in here? Where's the cleaning? The laundry? Why haven't you done them? I've already done them. You saw me, didn't you? What? I wasn't watching. Well, he had been glued to the TV in the living room, so that response was expected. You're always watching TV, that's why. What? Shut up! Growing even angrier at my words, Jack shouted. Clean the house now! You're basically my maid! No rest for you! And splashed the liquid he was holding onto me. I instantly recognized the smell. Beer. My clothes clung to me, sticky and smelling of alcohol. And there was Jack, laughing at me. The shock left me speechless. Get to work now! With that, he kicked over a stack of books nearby. His mocking laughter echoing throughout the room. I was paralyzed, watching the beer-soaked pages of the books. Then, from the computer came a familiar male voice. Is that all you have to say? Dad? Yes. It was Jack's father. My father-in-law. Jack. What on earth are you doing? I saw everything. How could you verbally abuse Susan and then drench her in beer? When did you become this monster? No, Dad, it's not what you think. Jack, who had been so aggressive moments before, was now clearly terrified. Despite his son's pleas, my father-in-law's fury didn't wane. What do you mean, it's not what I think? It's obvious this wasn't the first time, right? Well. When did you start acting like this, Jack? My father-in-law seemed deeply disappointed, and understandably so. Seeing his own son behave this way must have been shocking. Ignoring Jack's attempts to explain, my father-in-law turned to me with an offer. Susan, do you want to come over to our place right now? Now? Yes. I don't feel comfortable leaving you there with him. If you're okay with it, I'll come get you right away. I was taken aback by his sudden invitation. But thinking it over, I couldn't predict what Jack might do next. Is that okay with you? Absolutely. Wait for me. And Jack, if you do anything to her, you'll answer to me. With that, he ended the call. I quickly packed a bag and waited by the front door for my in-laws to arrive. Jack was pacing nervously, but he didn't harm me. A few minutes later, my in-laws showed up, and I headed to their home. The moment my father-in-law opened the door, I could see the fear in Jack's eyes. He was truly terrified of his own father. Jack, reflect on your actions tonight, alone. Understand? Dad, I'm sorry, What are you babbling about? Your apologies should be directed at Susan, not me. Just reflect on your behavior. Got it? With that, my father-in-law ushered me out of the house. I had changed my clothes, but I hadn't had the chance to shower. Wrapping a towel around me, he gently led me to his car. Minutes later, we arrived at my in-laws' house, where my mother-in-law was waiting. Susan, are you okay? Yes. Thank you. She hugged me gently and guided me to the bathroom. Take your time. Fresh clothes and towels are here for you. Thank you. Everything had happened so quickly, my mind was still reeling. After the shower, I changed into the clothes they'd provided and headed to the living room. Thank you for the shower. No worries. Both my father-in-law, with his stern face, and my concerned-looking mother-in-law were seated on the sofa. Urged by my mother-in-law, I sat down. Susan, can you tell us everything that's been going on? It wasn't the first time, was it? Well. Please, Susan. Lost for words, I fell silent. However, my in-laws patiently waited for me to speak. Minutes passed, and I recounted everything that had transpired since our marriage and why I hadn't confided in them earlier. They listened without interrupting until I finished. And then, things got like today. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I didn't want to worry you. I'm sorry. Well, I understand how you feel, but don't let someone like that get the best of them. Yes, I'm sorry. Although they were stern, I could feel they were genuinely concerned for me. There was another prolonged silence. Both of them seemed deep in thought, and the atmosphere wasn't one where words could easily flow. After a few minutes, my father-in-law finally broke the silence. Susan, do you still love Jack? To be honest, I think Jack will just repeat his behavior. Maybe you should consider a divorce. Beside him, my mother-in-law nodded in agreement. Divorcing Jack. I never imagined his parents would suggest it. True, it might be easier to divorce. But wouldn't he change after all this? My emotions were tangled because I had fallen for him, and even in this situation, I felt conflicted. However, they waited patiently for me to decide. After pondering for a few minutes, I reached my conclusion. I'll divorce him. That was my decision. Even though a small part of me still wanted to believe in Jack, when I really thought about it, he never listened to anything I said. If I went back without divorcing him, he'd probably continue treating me horribly. That's what I felt. My decision seemed to bring relief to both of them. After some discussion, we decided to propose the divorce the next day. Finally, I would be free from Jack. Even though I had hoped for his change until the very end, when the decision of divorce was settled, I felt at ease. The next day, I went to the house, accompanied by my in-laws. When we rang the doorbell, we heard footsteps immediately, and Jack opened the door. Susan. And Mom and Dad. Seeing his parents, Jack visibly looked disappointed. It should have been obvious that I wouldn't return alone so soon after what had happened. We entered the house and sat on the sofa. My in-laws also took seats beside me. Jack, still not apologizing, seemed restless. Watching him, I spoke up. Jack, I want a divorce. What? Divorce? I've thought it over. I don't have the confidence to continue with you. Over time, you'll forget what happened and repeat the same mistakes, won't you? That's not. You sure about that? You haven't even properly apologized. That itself shows you haven't truly reflected. I'm sorry. Jack, startled by my words, quickly apologized, but it was too late. I was no longer willing to forgive him. It's too late now. For everything. Here's the business card of a divorce attorney. From now on, let's discuss the divorce proceedings through this lawyer. With my in-laws on my side, I was able to speak my mind confidently to Jack. Too late. Jack, what were you thinking last night? You didn't even apologize to Susan, and you're surprised when she brings up divorce? If you were truly aware of the severity of your actions, you wouldn't be so shocked. I did something terrible, but I never thought it'd lead to divorce. You never thought it'd lead to divorce? You really have no clue, do you? I could see Jack shrinking back. All his bravado seemed to have vanished. Our relationship ended without him sincerely apologizing even once. By the way, as I was packing my things to leave the house, I asked him, "Why did your attitude change so drastically after we got married? When we were dating, there was none of this." At my question, Jack hesitantly opened his mouth. "I didn't want to be taken for granted, that's all." What? Taken for granted? Did I ever treat you that way when we were dating? No, you didn't. Please keep your wild imaginations in check. It's truly unbelievable. Yes. I understand. I told Jack that and left the house with my in-laws. I would never return here again. I did have an attachment to the house itself, so I felt a bit lonely. I had been staying at my in-laws' house. Being a full-time homemaker with no money, my in-laws had offered me a place to stay. Of course, I was nervous at first. However, over time, I became accustomed to the atmosphere of the in-laws' house, and even found leisure to enjoy handcrafting with my mother-in-law. During that time, Jack, who hadn't completely given up, tried to contact me. However, with my father-in-law intervening through my smartphone, telling him, "We're cutting ties with you," all communication ceased. Jack probably never imagined I'd be living with his parents. Seeing how he tried to sneakily contact me even after the divorce, I realized he still looked down on me. It was the right decision to divorce such a man. I can't thank my in-laws enough for urging the divorce. Now, a year after the divorce, I've started living alone and working part-time, leading a fulfilling life. I felt it wasn't right to depend on my in-laws forever. Though I moved out, I still maintain a relationship with them and continue to rely on them in various ways. Though we aren't bound by blood, my in-laws treated me like real family. Now, my goal is to repay their kindness. I wonder what I could do to make them happy. Today, and every day, I live my life without forgetting the gratitude I owe to my in-laws.